Barbara O'Brien's article was routine enough fare for a local newspaper. It would not go on to win a journalism award or change the world. It didn't even make Sunday's front page on that day in May of 2019. It merely was the kind of day in and day out local reporting that makes secretive town officials unhappy because of what they can't get away with, and lets local taxpayers know how their money is being spent. O'Brien, who reports on several suburban towns for the Buffalo News, had found that the Orchard Park police chief, who was retiring abruptly, would receive an unexplained $100,000 as part of his departure. A few weeks before O'Brien's story was published, she had asked town officials for the chief's separation agreement, but they said it couldn't be released because it included a confidentiality clause. Why would there be such a thing? She asked. The town supervisor referred the questions to the town attorney, who wouldn't comment. O'Brien doggedly took the next steps, as her story explained. The Buffalo News obtained a copy of the 16-page agreement after filing a Freedom of Information law request with the town. Keeping such a contract private is in violation of the Freedom of Information law, according to Robert J. Freeman, Executive Director of the State Committee on Open Government. The contract is public, notwithstanding a confidentiality clause, Freeman said. The courts have held time and again that an agreement requiring confidentiality cannot overcome rights conferred in the Freedom of Information law. Examining the agreement, O'Brien came across the $100,000 payout and wrote the story. And she would, of course, keep digging, because that is what diligent local reporters do. But there are fewer and fewer of them all the time. The Buffalo News is the regional newspaper where, until 2012, I served as top editor for 13 years. It's the largest news organization in New York State, outside the New York City metro area. Like virtually every other newspaper in the United States and many around the world, it's struggling. In the Internet age, circulation volume and advertising revenue have plummeted, and the newsroom staff is less than half what it was when I took the reins, down from 200 to fewer than 100 journalists. That sounds bad, but is actually better than most. American newspapers cut 45% of their newsroom staffs between 2008 and 2017, with many of the deepest cutbacks coming in the years after that. In some places, the situation is far worse. I use the term newspapers as a shorthand for newspaper companies, and mean to include their digital as well as print presence. It matters immensely. As Tom Rosenstyle, executive director of the American Press Institute, put it, if we don't monitor power at the local level, there will be massive abuse of power at the local level. And that's just the beginning of the damage that's already been done, with much more on the way. As a major PEN America study concluded in 2019, as local journalism declines, government officials conduct themselves with less integrity, efficiency, and effectiveness, and corporate malfeasance goes unchecked. With the loss of local news, citizens are less likely to vote, less politically informed, and less likely to run for office. Democracy, in other words, loses its foundation. The decline of local news is every bit as troubling as the spread of disinformation on the Internet. Cries of fake news from President Trump and his sympathizers may seem like the biggest problem in the media ecosystem. It's true that the public's lack of trust in their news sources, sometimes for good reason, is a great worry. But intentional disinformation, media bias, and the disparagement of the press for political reasons are not the subjects of this book. While these may grab the public's attention, another crisis is happening more quietly. Some of the most trusted sources of news, local sources, particularly local newspapers, are slipping away, never to return. the cost to democracy is great. It takes a toll on civic engagement, even on citizens' ability to have a common sense of reality and facts, the very basis of self-governance. So I'll be clear. I'm not here to address the politicized fake news problem or the actual disinformation problem. This book is about the real news problem.